There's never been a better time for young Western men to move abroad and start a better life. But in this video, I'm not going to bash the West and talk about why it sucks and why you should move abroad. You already know this. Instead, I'm going to talk about the positive reasons for why you should move abroad, because fundamentally, moving abroad as an ambitious young man is pivotal to your personal growth. And I'm going to talk to you about my story in terms of how I've lived in 5 different countries over the last 5 years, despite growing up in the rural countryside of Devon in the UK. And by the way, if you're new to my channel, my name's Ollie. I'm a young men's personal development coach. I help young men to start online businesses, build personal brands and improve their mindset. And as you can see right now, I'm currently here in Bangkok. I'm on the 41st floor of my condo block, which by the way, I'm paying 500 quid for. And I used to pay 520 pounds for a council house room in Leeds, right? This is a pool, sauna, steam, co-working spaces, beautiful, right? And the reason that I came out here fundamentally is because of the opportunities, right? And the people that you'll meet. And this is the first strand that I want to talk about in terms of why it's so important that you go abroad if you want to grow. The people. When you grow up in your home country, there are people around you who will never leave. There are people who will never leave their hometown. And this is exactly what I saw where I grew up in Devon. I grew up on the edge of Dartmoor in a tiny little town of 6,000 people. My parents weren't from there. One's from the north, one's from London. Both of them have lived abroad when they were younger. But I fundamentally remember growing up and seeing these people who had been in this town for generations on end, generation after generation. Nothing changes. They don't experience anything other than their locality. And there are loads of people like this. And it's a fundamentally different mindset, right? It's I don't want to say narrow, but more of a conserved mindset. It's limited, and humans have so much potential, right? They can go and do so much. They can grow in so many ways. There's so many things to experience. But so many of these people who are capable of moving, they won't do it. And I remember really feeling like I just did not want to be like those people. It was a huge driver for me to get as far away as possible from that as I could. And the way that this started was that I chose to go to uni in Leeds, which was 6 hours away from me. Most people went to uni in a local city. They didn't want to go more than like 2 hours. And that was the starting point for me. Then a little bit of time after that, I moved to Cyprus for 3 months. I worked as a rep for a tourist company, a British company. It was a British job. I was paying tax in the UK. It was like a tourism based job, but yeah, I was basically getting paid to get drunk and party in this place called Ayia Napa, which is like a party town in Cyprus. And then a year later, I moved to Australia, to the other side of the world, to do a year abroad with uni. Now granted, fairly easy transition. Australia is culturally very similar to the UK, given its history. But even then, in moving abroad for the second time, particularly for a longer period of time, this is when I really got more exposure to how people think and the types of people that you're around, because Australia is an incredibly parochial country in a lot of places, especially in the countryside there. It is enormous. We're talking like serious bogan rednecks, right? People who live in these tiny communities, miles and miles away from anyone. But then at the same time, I was living with all the immigrants and the people that were traveling and studying. And you notice the difference in mindset between these people. People who move abroad, they have a more expansive, explorative, a more anti-establishment way of looking at things. And these people you will learn so much more from, you will relate to far more, you will grow far more from being around, and you will build better relationships with. And this isn't to say that people who choose to stay in their home country and don't leave their town aren't nice people, they're not good people. It's personal preference at the end of the day. But fundamentally, if you are expansive, if you want to grow, if you want to start businesses and go out and experience the world, you're not going to get it in the same way if you just stay in your hometown or your home city around all these people who are staying comfortable with what they know. This is fundamentally the difference that you see between these people, is they don't want the discomfort of moving abroad. And that moves us on to the second point of why it's so important, because for young men in their personal growth, what makes growth happen is your exposure to discomfort. It's again a fundamental rule of any personal development book that you read. They'll talk about it, that life is difficult, and when you expose yourself to struggle, that is where you really see the most growth. And most people today, they're too fixated on comfort and avoiding discomfort. Men in the personal development community, obviously they're aware that they need to do the opposite. But even so, right, when you move abroad, there is a lot of discomfort that comes to it, depending on where you go. But either way, there's going to be cultural differences, there might be language differences, there might be the whole process with bureaucracy, visa, settling in, meeting new people. There are a whole range of challenges to overcome, and these aren't bad at all. They're very positive things to experience. And moving abroad is one of the best ways that you can expose yourself to that and grow substantially in a very short amount of time as a result. Moving abroad gave me more growth in 1 year than probably 3 years of being at university for the other years that I was there. You notice the difference in people who have lived abroad when you chat to them, because they have grown, they have seen more. And it doesn't matter what kind of person they are, whether they're professional, their level of intelligence, like just that experience of being elsewhere, it fundamentally changes the way that you see things. There is substantial growth to come from it, and that is a really positive thing that I'd highly recommend. And this relates to the third point that I want to say with this, is this comes down to your mindset, right? Personal growth is deeply related to your mindset. Mindset growth is personal growth. And the two key examples that I experienced of this were around my resilience and my experience of anxiety. So growing up as a teenager, I experienced really bad anxiety. I was actually diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder when I was about 18, 19 years old. I always used to be fearful and worried that things weren't going to work out. But moving abroad was probably the most pivotal change in that for me, because there were so many scenarios that I found myself out here where I was worried about money, I was worried about flights, visas, whatever it may be, whether I was going to meet people, and it always ended up working out. So it helped me logically to understand the world, that things do work out, that actually there wasn't so much need to worry about the things that were going on around me. But then also with that comes the confidence too. So I've always been confident. I've had this weird mix of my ego being low self-esteem at times and highly self-critical, but also the polar opposite, extremely ambitious and having a deep-rooted belief that I will thrive in what I'm doing. But there were many periods, particularly in my late teenage years and early 20s, where it was much more overshadowed by the critical voice and depression and anxiety, and not so much confidence in what I was doing. But coming out here again, traveling, going around the world, like I've traveled like 30 different countries now, lived in 5 of them. Doing this, it made me know myself better. It made me know who I am, who I like to be with, how I can communicate, what sort of things I can do. It exposed me to the other people that I can learn from at the same time. And when you build that level of confidence in doing so, you are going to become more self-assured as a man as a result of it. And there are more positive things that will come into your life as a result of that. You attract them into your life, whether that's your dating, whether it's money, whether it's friends, opportunities, the places that you live. Fundamentally, it really changed my mindset and the way that I look at things. And I also want to say this, right? It doesn't have to be permanent if you do this. You don't have to become a digital nomad and be moving around all the time. For me personally, I don't like to stay set in one specific place. I like to be able to move around. For me, ideally, it's like 3 to 4 months in a couple of places. So like a third of a year, or maybe slightly less, like a quarter in different places, experience different things. But you could go and spend a few years abroad and then realize, actually, I do want to go back to where I grew up. Maybe home is where your heart is, right? It isn't for me. I don't ever want to live in Devon again, or the UK for that matter. But for other people, you might realise that in time. Going abroad might teach you that. It might show you more and help you to appreciate what you do have. And I admit this is something that I actually found over the years, is that there are things that I value about going back to Devon. Granted, it just needs to be very short term. But just doing those few years, right? Whether it's because your work finishes, whether it's because you run out of money, whether it's because your relationship ends, or you just decide that you want to go back, it doesn't really matter. You can spend a short period of time abroad and you can grow substantially, as I've said, and it will shape you into the person that you want to be going forward. So, I cannot stress this enough, right? The West at the moment, it really sucks, right? It's not a good place to live. But on the flip side of that, we have a fantastic opportunity to make money online, to have more freedom and to network with like-minded people as young men. There are plenty of these guys in the block that I'm in at the moment. I put a post in my community about this last night, talking about the things that the guys here are doing. Some of them are selling courses, one of them runs an agency, one of them works in sales, some of them work in marketing. I do coaching and I also get paid for my content, and I'm launching a community, a whole range of different things. There are so many avenues out there, you just have to find the right one for you. And if that's something that you're interested in, feel free to reach out again. The links are in my bio, and I will see you in the next video.